They told me not to come back yet, said the paperwork could wait, that I should take my time grieving. But I knew my son's voice too well, and it was hiding something. I returned home early, expecting sorrow. Instead, I found whispers behind closed doors, and a secret that shattered everything I thought I knew about the men I loved most. I hadn't even unpacked my suitcase when the phone rang. It was my son, Nate, his voice flat and formal like he was calling a client, not his mother. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Listen, Dad passed." Just like that. No soft landing, no warning, just a two-word gut punch over speakerphone while I stood barefoot in my sister's Florida kitchen, holding a coffee mug that suddenly felt too heavy. He said it happened the night before, during their visit in Chicago, peacefully, in his sleep. There was nothing anyone could do. He kept talking, something about arrangements, timelines, how there's no need to rush back. I heard the words, but they didn't register. My brain had latched onto one thing. Nate didn't sound shaken. Not in the way you'd expect a son to be after watching his father die. I asked when the funeral would be. He paused. "That's still in motion. Kinda complicated. There's paperwork, some things to finalize first. Honestly, it's probably better if you stay put for a week or two." That stopped me cold. I've known Nate all his life. He's never been good at pretending, and that sentence was stitched together like a patchy quilt. It wasn't grief, it was control. And just like that, I knew something was wrong. I nodded through the call, thanked him, hung up, and sat in silence while my sister Dot fussed around the kitchen, her eyebrows knitting together. "What is it?" she asked finally. "Roy's gone," I said. "Apparently." Dot froze mid-pour, coffee sloshing onto the counter. "Apparently? I'm flying back tomorrow morning. You sure that's a good idea?" "I mean, no," I said, and turned toward the guest room. "But I'm sure I'm not waiting for permission." I booked a ticket before dinner, a non-stop to Omaha. I didn't call Nate again, didn't tell him I was coming. I packed quiet. Slower this time. My wedding ring went into the front zipper pouch, the same place I used to keep emergency Band-Aids and breath mints when Nate was little. Funny how some habits don't die, even when people do. The next afternoon, I walked into my own house. The key turned smoothly. Too smoothly. Inside, the air smelled like someone had been trying to cover something up. A candle, sickly sweet, lavender and citrus, nothing like the pine Roy liked to burn in winter. And there they were, Nate and Courtney, in the study, my study. They hadn't heard me come in. I stood in the hallway, my suitcase still behind me, the clack of its wheels muffled by the rug. They were rifling through the filing cabinet, the one Roy kept locked until about 6 months ago, when his hands started shaking too much to manage tiny keys. Courtney's voice was low but sharp. "We need to find the version he emailed the lawyer in April. That's the one that splits everything. The older one still gives her the house." My knees went cold. Nate opened another drawer. "It's here somewhere. Just help me check before she shows up. She wasn't supposed to fly in yet." "I told you. She's slow with this kind of thing. Always has been. We've got time." I backed away, heart pounding so hard I thought the picture frames on the wall might rattle. My mouth tasted like pennies. I didn't walk in on them. Not then. I slipped out the front door and circled around to the porch, waited 2 full minutes, then slammed the door open loud enough to shake the coat hooks. Courtney appeared first. Her smile was tight, like she'd just tasted sour milk and didn't want to make a scene. "Oh, you're back early. Guess I got the date wrong," I said, setting my suitcase down a little harder than I meant to. "Didn't expect company." Nate came in behind her, eyes darting, face blank. He pulled the performance together fast. A half hug, a muttered, "Sorry again about Dad." I didn't hug back. Instead, I looked around. The furniture had been rearranged. My wedding photo was off the mantel. There was a box labeled "Donate" in the hallway, and one of Roy's jackets, the blue one with the elbow patches, poking out the top. I straightened my shoulders. "I'm home," I said. And this time, it wasn't a statement. It was a warning. Courtney blinked first. "We weren't expecting you until next week," she said, smoothing a wrinkle from her blouse that wasn't there. I looked her straight in the face. "Clearly." Nate cleared his throat. "We figured you'd want more time with Aunt Dot. We didn't want to rush you. It's been a lot." He said it like I'd missed a brunch, not my husband's death. I didn't answer. I stepped around them and made a slow, deliberate walk to the living room. The silence behind me dragged like a torn hem. I sank into Roy's recliner, my recliner now, though I'd never liked the shape of it, and looked around. The mantel was bare, the framed wedding photo of us in our 20s, gone. The bowl where he kept his keys, empty. My eyes moved to the bookshelf. Some of my cookbooks were missing. "What exactly were you two doing in Roy's office?" I asked finally. Courtney opened her mouth, but Nate cut in. "We were just trying to make things easier for you. Sorting paperwork, going through old files. You know how Dad kept everything." I did know. I also knew Roy never let anyone into his file cabinet, not even me, not without supervision and a long sigh. "I see," I said. "Well, don't let me stop you." They exchanged a look, the kind married people learn to communicate whole conversations in. I felt like an intruder in my own home, standing amid my own life rearranged like an estate sale. After a painfully silent dinner, a reheated casserole Courtney graciously thawed, I retreated to my bedroom, or what was left of it. My side of the closet had been compressed to one end. Roy's side, empty. Gone. No flannel shirts, no cufflinks, not even the ridiculous tie with little saxophones that I'd always hated but couldn't throw away. And there on the nightstand was a manila envelope with my name on it. My heart thumped once, hard. I opened it. Inside was a printout of a will. Roy's signature. Dated 7 months ago. Nate was named executor. The house, our home for over 30 years, was to be transferred into a trust managed by Nathaniel R. Summers. Retirement accounts, savings, pension distributions, all to be allocated according to financial discretion of the executor. There was one single sentence naming me. Helen M. Summers shall be allowed residence pending health and cognitive ability. Allowed. I sat down on the bed, the mattress unfamiliar, like someone had changed it while I was gone. I read the sentence again, and again. Then I folded the document neatly, placed it back in the envelope, and stood. The next morning, I drove to the law office Roy used, Macaulay and Grant, right off Maple. The same one we'd visited together a few years ago when we updated our wills after Roy's first heart scare. A young assistant at the front desk tapped away at a keyboard. "Do you have an appointment?" "Number. But I need to speak to Mr. Grant. I'm Helen Summers. Roy Summers was my husband." Her fingers froze. I'm sorry for your loss. Mr. Grant's in a meeting, but I can tell him it's about a will. I'll wait." And wait I did. 45 minutes and 2 lukewarm cups of coffee later, Mr. Grant stepped into the lobby, looking equal parts surprised and annoyed. "Helen," he said, shaking my hand. "Wasn't expecting you yet." "Clearly," I replied. He led me into his office, all wood paneling and stale lemon air freshener. I showed him the will. He didn't even flinch. "This is the most recent version?" "Yes," he said. "Funny. Roy and I wrote one together in 2019. This is dated 7 months ago. I wasn't consulted." "Well, legally, he didn't have to consult you. Assets in his name could be reassigned." "And he reassigned them all to Nate?" He shifted in his chair. "A portion. Some are in a family trust." I leaned forward. "Is there another version? Anything more recent?" He hesitated. There was a draft. Updated digitally, requested by Nate via Roy's authorization. I believe Roy intended to sign it, but what? It was never notarized. I stared at him. So the document I found, the one on my nightstand, isn't even official? He didn't answer, which was all the answer I needed. By the time I walked out of that office, my legs ached and my head spun, but my mind was sharp. Something was wrong. Roy wasn't the type to do things behind my back. He was stubborn, yes, and secretive about passwords, but he didn't lie. Not like this. Not leave a will like a trap door beneath my feet. I sat in my car, engine off, hands on the wheel, and I replayed every conversation with Nate from the last month. Every odd tone, every vague answer. Then I remembered something. That night, in the hallway, when I walked in. Courtney had said, "We've got time. She's slow with this kind of thing." Time for what? I wasn't slow. Not anymore. Not today. I wasn't slow. Not anymore. Not today. I didn't drive straight home after leaving the lawyer's office. I turned the wheel toward the hospital instead. St. Agnes Memorial, the one Roy was supposedly taken to. I walked through the automatic doors like someone on autopilot, nodded at the security guard, and stepped up to the reception window. The nurse behind the glass gave me a practiced smile. "Can I help you?" "My husband," I said. "Roy Summers. I need to confirm if he was admitted." She blinked, then typed. Clicked. Typed some more. Her lips pursed slightly. "What date would that have been?" "3 days ago. Supposedly. I've been told he passed here." She searched again, her eyes moving faster this time. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no record of a Roy Summers admitted or deceased here in the last 2 weeks. Are you sure it was this hospital?" I stood very still. "No," I said softly. "I'm not sure of anything anymore." Back in the car, I sat for a long time with the engine running and the air conditioning blowing cold across my cheeks. I pulled up the obituary page for the local paper on my phone. Nothing. No Roy Summers. No service notice. Not even a placeholder. I tried the funeral home Nate had mentioned during that stiff dinner, Birchwood and Sons. Called from the car. The woman on the line was chipper. "Nope, no Summers family on our docket," she said. "Maybe you're thinking of Birchwood in Lincoln? We get that a lot." I hung up without answering. The next hour blurred. Phone calls, more dead ends. The crematorium? No record. Vital Records Office? No death certificate filed. It was as if Roy had vanished into thin air. Not died. Disappeared. Back home I made tea, even though my hands were shaking hard enough to rattle the mug. I set the kettle down and noticed something odd near the baseboard in the study. A flash drive. Dusty. Half hidden under the leg of Roy's desk. I picked it up carefully, like it might bite me. Courtney and Nate had missed it. I booted up Roy's old laptop. Still password protected, of course, but I knew the trick. He always used jazz albums for passwords. After 3 guesses, Kind of Blue 68 got me in. The flash drive clicked into place. A folder popped up. Just one, labeled Westlake. Inside, there were 3 documents and a video file. The first document was a transfer of funds to a trust registered offshore. Not illegal, but shady enough to send shivers down my back. The second was a scanned copy of Roy's signature assigning power of attorney to Nate, dated 6 months ago. And the third, a scanned ID for a private rehab clinic in Illinois, under a fake name, Raymond Ellis. I opened the video file last. The screen lit up with Roy's face. He looked pale, thinner than I remembered, sitting in a hospital bed. The room behind him was beige and sterile, too clean for a dying man. He smiled slightly. "If you're watching this, Helen," he said, "then Nate screwed up." I froze. Roy went on. "I didn't want this. Not the way it's going. I just wanted to disappear. I thought it'd be easier for everyone. For you." He looked down. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you, but I couldn't." You would have tried to stop me." He rubbed his face with one hand. "By the time you see this, I was supposed to be out of the country. Costa Rica, maybe. Somewhere with warm water and no paperwork. If Nate didn't follow the timeline, that's on him. You always were better at clocks than he was." The video ended abruptly. I sat there, knees pressed together, every muscle tense. He was alive. He was gone. He had tried to vanish from our life like a shadow at noon. And Nate, my son, had helped him. My first instinct was to confront them, to throw the laptop into Nate's smug face and demand answers. But I'd spent my life acting on instinct. This time, I needed to think. I drove to the First Federal Bank branch we used for over 30 years, asked to speak to a manager, the same one who'd helped us open our joint account after Roy's retirement. She remembered me, smiled kindly. "I need to open a safe deposit box," I said. "Private. My name only." She didn't ask why. I placed the flash drive, the copy of the will, and a handwritten log of everything I'd uncovered so far into a small metal box and locked it away. I kept a duplicate of the video file on a second drive in my purse, just in case. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I made up the guest room instead, with the door locked and the light on. Around midnight, I heard a creak in the hallway. Slow, careful steps. Then silence. I gripped the handle of my old travel umbrella like it was a weapon. The next morning, I acted like nothing was wrong. Made coffee. Wore my blue blouse with the pearl buttons. The one Roy always said made me look too sharp. Good. I wanted to be sharp. But Courtney was watching me. I saw her in the reflection of the microwave as I reached for a mug. Her eyes were narrowed, calculating. That afternoon, while Nate was out, she slipped into my room uninvited. Didn't knock. Just pushed the door open like it was hers. "I need to know what you found," she said, voice clipped. I blinked. "Found?" "Don't play dumb." Her face tightened. "The files. The video. Whatever you're hiding." I stood slowly. "And what makes you think I'm hiding anything?" Courtney stepped closer. "Because Nate's nervous, and he only gets nervous when he's guilty." I didn't move. "Then I suppose you should be very nervous too." She stared at me a second longer, then left. As the door shut behind her, I sat back down on the bed and smiled. Just a little. They'd underestimated me. Big mistake. The next morning I packed a small bag, not the roller suitcase. I didn't want them asking questions. But a plain canvas tote with a change of clothes, my arthritis pills, and the flash drive copy tucked into a sunglasses case. I told Nate I was visiting a friend from church. "Book club thing," I said. "I'll be back before dinner." He barely looked up from his phone. "Take your time," he mumbled. I drove straight to the airport. Not to fly, just to think. I parked at the far end of the short-term lot, where no one would notice me. Pulled up the address I'd found on that file labeled Westlake Holdings, a residential listing outside of Tucson, Arizona. Under the name of D. Lawrence. D as in Diana. I'd never heard of her. Never seen the name in Roy's emails. Never spotted it on a Christmas card. But there she was, listed as a co-beneficiary in one of the shell accounts Roy had set up. I didn't know what I'd find, but I booked a same-day flight and left a voicemail with my neighbor, Carol, asking her to water my plants. Again, the Arizona sun hit like a slap, dry and direct. My rental car smelled like vinyl and hot plastic, and the air conditioning wheezed like it had asthma. I drove through a neighborhood too new to have trees, where all the houses looked like someone had copied and pasted them across a spreadsheet. Number 3187. Cream stucco, orange tile roof, 2 Adirondack chairs out front, staged just so. And on the porch, a woman about my age, in cropped linen pants and a sleeveless top, sipping something out of a glass tumbler. I parked and got out slowly. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice light. "Is this the Lawrence residence?" She looked up. She had careful hair and expensive glasses, and when she saw me, her face shifted. Not recognition exactly, but alertness. "Yes," she said. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for someone. I was told he might be here. Roy Summers?" The silence stretched. Finally, she stood. "You'd better come in." Her living room was full of pale furniture and citrus-scented candles. Every surface looked curated. I sat on the edge of her couch, watching her carefully pour iced tea into a pair of matching glasses. "I'm Diana," she said. "Roy told me about you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Did he now?" She looked down. "He said you passed. 3 years ago. Cancer. He said it was a long, peaceful decline." My mouth opened, then shut. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. "He told me he wanted to start over, that you two had grown apart, that you didn't want to travel, and he did, that he needed a second life." I took the glass, but didn't drink. "Did he tell you about the house he still lived in with me? The meals I still cooked? The yard I still mowed?" She flushed. "He said the marriage was done in every way but paperwork." I shook my head. "I was married to that man for over 40 years. I know what a lie sounds like. I just didn't know how many he was capable of." She sat down across from me, legs crossed neatly. "Look, I didn't know he was faking anything. I thought we were waiting for the estate to clear. He said it was messy. I figured grief makes people complicated." "Grief?" I scoffed. "That man isn't grieving. He's hiding." Diana went quiet. After a moment, she said, "He left last week, said it was finally in motion. He's probably on a plane somewhere now." I leaned forward. "Do you know where?" She hesitated, then got up and rifled through a drawer, pulled out a Post-it. "He left this, said it was for emergencies." On it was the name of a private medical center in Illinois, Oakbridge Wellness Retreat. I folded the note and stood. "Tell him," I said, "that Helen says hi, and that next time he wants to fake a death, he should pick a woman who can't read tax filings." I walked out before she could respond. Back home the next night, I found Nate in the kitchen, wiping crumbs from the counter with all the grace of a guilty teenager. He looked up too quickly when I came in. "Long book club," he said, half laughing. I didn't reply. I went straight to my room, closed the door, and locked it. The next morning, I called the Oakbridge Center. I pretended to be Roy's sister. Asked if Raymond Ellis had checked in. The nurse on the other end, sweet and clueless, confirmed he was indeed a patient, currently in transition counseling before an international relocation. International. I ended the call and sat in the silence. That night, Nate cornered me in the hallway. His voice was low, but his eyes were wild. "You've been snooping." I tilted my head. "Snooping? That's a word teenagers use when they get caught. I know you've been digging. The trust. The files. Courtney said you were acting strange." "Strange," I repeated. "That's rich, coming from someone who faked his father's funeral." He stepped forward, and for a second I saw something in his face I didn't recognize. Panic, maybe, or cruelty. "Look, Mom, if you keep this up, I'll have no choice. You're unstable. You're old. People will believe me." I smiled. "You sure about that?" He didn't answer, just turned and walked away, shoulders tight. But he was right about one thing. People would believe someone. I just had to make sure it was me. The moment Nate walked out of that hallway, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my notebook. Not a digital file, a real notebook, spiral-bound, coffee-stained, and more reliable than half the people in my family. I started writing down everything. Dates, names, conversations, things I'd overheard, emails I remembered reading, even the way Roy's signature had changed over the last year. I'd seen enough courtroom dramas to know stories don't win cases, evidence does. The next morning, I made an appointment with an attorney. Not just anyone. A woman I'd met at the community center fundraiser last fall. Miriam Kwame, former state prosecutor, now semi-retired and specializing in elder law and fraud. She was younger than me, sharp-eyed and quick-tongued, the kind of woman who didn't waste time pretending things were okay when they weren't. When I told her my story, she didn't blink. She just asked, "How much proof do you have?" I slid the flash drive across the table. Enough to make them nervous. She spent the next 30 minutes clicking through files, taking notes. Occasionally she raised an eyebrow, but otherwise stayed stone-faced. When the video played, Roy's face, his voice, she leaned back in her chair and exhaled through her teeth. "You realize this is criminal fraud, right?" she said. "At minimum, there's wire fraud, false documentation, attempted illegal asset transfer, abuse of power of attorney. Add betrayal and emotional manipulation to the list," I said. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "I'll get a petition in front of a judge. We'll freeze any assets related to the trust and initiate a formal inquiry into your husband's whereabouts. But this won't be quiet." "I'm done being quiet," I said. By noon the next day, Miriam had filed for a temporary injunction on the estate. She served a notice to the bank managing Roy's accounts and submitted a formal affidavit requesting that Oakbridge Wellness Retreat hold Roy under observation until the court ruled on his legal status. And then we waited. At home, things were strained. Nate barely spoke to me. Courtney avoided eye contact altogether. They knew something had shifted. I was no longer the fragile woman they could shuffle from room to room with soft smiles and guilt. I was dangerous now, unpredictable, and worst of all, informed. 2 days later, it exploded. Nate came home from work early, slammed the front door so hard the picture frames trembled. He stormed into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. "What the hell did you do?" he hissed. I didn't flinch. "You'll need to be more specific. They froze the accounts. The trust is under review. Dad's being questioned by the Illinois State Bar." I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, faced him. "You think you can stage your father's death, forge documents, and shuffle me into a corner like I'm some houseplant, and I'll just nod and say thank you?" He stared at me, breathing hard. "I'm your mother, Nathaniel. Not your maid, not your obstacle, and certainly not your liability." His hands curled into fists. "You think you're going to win? He didn't want you in his life anymore. He told me that, years ago." I stepped forward, close enough to smell the stale coffee on his breath. "Then why didn't he say it to my face?" He opened his mouth, but I was already walking past him. That night Miriam called. The injunction was granted. Roy's location was confirmed. A court summons had been issued for both him and Nate to appear at a probate hearing in 2 weeks. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I sat in my room and cried. Not for Roy. Not even for Nate, but for the version of myself who'd believed that loyalty bought protection. That love once earned couldn't be revoked like a faulty credit card. The next morning, Nate tried one last move. He barged into the house while I was reading on the porch, shoved open the screen door and shouted, "You're insane! I'll call Adult Protective Services. I'll have you declared unfit." I didn't even blink. I reached for my phone, hit record, and held it up. "Say that again," I said, but slower. He froze. "You come into my home," I said, "threaten me, yell at me, and expect me to cower? Try it. Go ahead. Call APS. File for guardianship. Explain to them how you forged your father's death and tried to steal his estate." He backed away like I'd slapped him. "You're gonna regret this." "I already regret raising a man who thinks fear is power," I said. The screen door snapped shut behind him. 2 hours later, a cruiser pulled up to the house. Officer Medina, a kind-eyed woman in her 40s, stepped out. She said they received a report about a domestic disturbance. I invited her in, made her tea, showed her the footage from my phone and the paperwork from my lawyer. She nodded slowly. "Looks like he's the one who should be worried." I smiled for the first time in days. Before she left, she handed me her card. Call me if he shows up again. You've got a temporary protection order now, and you're not alone. And for the first time in weeks, I believed it. 2 weeks later, I walked into the Douglas County Courthouse wearing the navy dress I'd bought for Roy's retirement party. I remember standing in front of the mirror that morning, buttoning the cuff of one sleeve, thinking how absurd it was to wear something meant for celebration to a courtroom. But I also remembered what Dot had said on the phone the night before. Wear something that reminds you who you are. So I did. The courtroom was cold and overlit, the kind of sterile space that felt designed to make people small. Nate sat at one table, looking too polished, too calm, his lawyer whispering something in his ear. I caught the flicker of surprise when he saw me walk in with Miriam. No hesitation, no cane, no fear. Roy wasn't there yet. We waited 20 minutes, then 30. Finally, the bailiff opened the doors, and 2 men wheeled Roy in. Not in a stretcher, not even in a hospital gown, just a simple wheelchair and a look of quiet defeat. He was thinner than I remembered, but not sick, not dying, just older, cowardly. His eyes met mine for half a second, then dropped to the floor. The judge, an older woman with cropped white hair and a voice that could sand paint, called the session to order. Miriam stood first. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just walked the court through the timeline. The false claims of death, the forged emails and will drafts, the offshore account, the video. She played it. Roy's face on the screen, admitting everything. The courtroom stayed silent, except for one woman near the back who gasped when he said, "I just wanted to disappear." Then it was Nate's turn. His lawyer tried to spin it. Confusion, misunderstanding, a misguided attempt to protect family assets during a vulnerable time. Nate kept his head down the whole time. Then the judge called me forward. I stood behind the witness podium, hands steady, voice clear. "I was married to Roy for 42 years, I began. "I raised our son. I ran our household. I took care of everything while they planned behind my back." I looked over at Nate, then Roy. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because I refuse to be erased. I refuse to be treated like an afterthought, like a relic to be stored away while they divide what's mine." The judge nodded once and gestured for me to sit. It didn't take long. The ruling was swift, almost surgical. The trust was dissolved. All assets were frozen pending reassignment. The forged will was declared invalid. The court reinstated the original joint will Roy and I signed together in 2019, the one that named me full beneficiary of the estate. Nate was barred from acting as executor. A restraining order was extended for 1 year, and Roy, my husband of 4 decades, was ordered to undergo psychiatric evaluation before being allowed to manage or control any financial matters again. After the ruling, I didn't stay to speak to either of them. I walked out of the courthouse and stepped into the sunlight. My attorney shook my hand, said she'd be in touch. I told her thank you, and meant it. That evening, I called a realtor. The next morning, I listed the house, not because I couldn't stand to stay, I'd already survived worse under that roof, but because I didn't want to live surrounded by ghosts of things that were never real. 3 weeks later, I stood in the driveway with a small suitcase and a cab waiting. One of the neighbors waved. I waved back. There was no grand goodbye, no packing party, just a quiet departure. My flight took me south. I bought a condo outside Santa Fe, a little adobe place with a shaded patio and rosemary bushes along the walkway. The air there felt lighter, like I didn't owe it anything. One morning I brewed coffee and sat on the patio in my robe, the sun already warming the flagstones. A box arrived from Omaha, forwarded from the old address. Inside was the original wedding photo. Somehow, I hadn't realized it had gone missing. I framed it, hung it near the kitchen. Not for him, for me. to remember what was good, and to know I'd survived what wasn't. There was a time I believed family meant permanence, that once you gave your heart to someone, your loyalty, your years, they would protect it. But now I know better. Now I know that love doesn't always come back the way you gave it. And that's okay. Because I came back to myself, and that, in the end, was the only return that mattered.